Credit utilization is one of the most misunderstood and confusing concepts probably in credit scoring. And it could be lowering your credit score for no better reason than you just simply have never been introduced to the concept, don't necessarily know how it all works or is factored into credit scoring, or you just simply not certain on the math and how to calculate it properly. So we're going to cover those things today so that we open your eyes to how this concept works and potentially give you the opportunity to take a look at your credit report and do this evaluation and maybe improve that profile a little bit, at least as it's concerned with credit utilization. So the first thing we need to obviously understand is what is credit utilization. And in a simple definition, it is that ratio between the total amount of credit that you're using, or the credit balances on your credit cards in particular, sometimes home equity loans as well, but any sort of revolving credit that you have, and again, credit cards are probably the best example, so that the total amount of balance or credit that you're using versus the total amount of available credit that you have, or the total of your credit limit on any individual account or in aggregate across all of your accounts. So why is this so important? Well, first and foremost, it is an important component of how the credit scoring system evaluates how you manage debt. So that certainly makes it important to understand because it's being factored into that credit score every time a scoring model is evaluating your credit report. But the other thing, and probably more important, at least in our discussion today, is by looking at your credit report and understanding this concept, it could potentially be a fairly easy factor in your credit scoring to improve on today. And that could be as simple as just using your credit cards a little less each month, or perhaps actually putting together a plan to pay down some of that debt or balance that you're carrying from month to month on your credit cards. So certainly when you take a look at your credit report, evaluate very carefully your credit utilization, and there could be some big opportunities for significant improvement. So let's figure out how the calculation works and what it might look like on your particular credit report. So I keep saying the credit report because you can certainly get these numbers from your credit card statements and those sorts of things, but ultimately the credit score that's being done on you is being evaluated against your credit report. So it's better to use the numbers that are actually on your credit report, number one, because they could be incorrect and you could fix that if that's the case. And if not, if they just sort of vary slightly because of timing of when they get reported versus when your statement comes out, you'll make sure that you're calculating with the most accurate information as it concerns your credit score. So let's take a look at this simple example. Let's say that you have two credit cards, a Visa and a MasterCard. So the first numbers we want to get is what are the credit limits and what are the credit balances. So in this scenario, I have $4,000 credit limit on the Visa. I'm actually using $2,000 of that, or I have a credit balance of $2,000 on that credit card. And in order to calculate utilization, I simply take the credit balance, which is $2,000, divided by the credit limit, which is $4,000. That's my total available credit. And then I'm going to take that number and multiply it by 100 to give me a percentage. And in this particular case, I have a 50% credit utilization on this particular credit account. So now I'm going to look at my second credit account, which is a MasterCard, and I take the same numbers, which in this particular case is $6,000 for my credit limit and $500 for my credit balance. And I'm going to divide that $500 that I'm using by the $600 of total available credit that I have on my MasterCard. Take that number, multiply it by 100 to give me a percentage. And in this particular account, at the account level, I have only a 10% credit utilization. So just in general, the thing that you want to keep in mind here is that you want to have the lowest possible credit utilization per account. So the lower that number is, the lower that percentage is, the more positive the credit scoring model will evaluate your credit risk. So those were the individual account levels. We're going to take the same scenario and now we're going to do another calculation which is taken into consideration, and that is what is your aggregate credit utilization. So across all of your accounts, as we put them together, what does that credit utilization look like? So taking the exact same scenario, we're going to take our Visa card and our MasterCard and we're going to add them together. So when we look at credit limit, we're going to add the the 4,000 plus the 6,000, and we come up with a total credit limit of $10,000. Then we're going to look at the credit balance. We're going to take the 2,000 on the Visa, the 500 on the MasterCard. We're going to add those together, and we have a total credit balance of $2,500. Now we do the same credit utilization calculation. We're going to take our balance, our total balance, which is $2,500. We're going to divide it by the total credit limit, which is $10,000. Multiply that by 100 to get a percentage, and I have a total aggregate credit utilization across all my accounts of 25%. So again, to give you sort of a rule of thumb so that you know how you're doing, the very best credit scores on average have account and aggregate credit utilization percentages of somewhere less than 10%. However, these are evaluated in sort of a weighted way. So if you have 50% credit utilization and you're able to reduce that to 30%, that's certainly going to have a positive effect. And then if you take it from 30% to 10%, that's going to have even more positive effect. So ultimately what you're trying to do is you're just trying to improve that credit utilization by, of course, lowering it as low as possible. So now we're going to look at a little bit of a tricky example, but a very important example. So in this particular case, we're going to use the same two accounts in the same aggregate account picture, but in this scenario, I've actually paid off the MasterCard. So my credit balance now on the Silver MasterCard is $0, which gives me a credit utilization on that particular card of 0%. So now, a lot of times this is where things get done improperly. Some people will forget about that account because they don't use it and they won't calculate it in their credit utilization. So again, very important to look at your credit report and make sure that you have a list of all of your accounts and all of your available credit, because look at what it does here. When we take the total credit limit, we now have a $10,000 of total credit limit, which is what we had in the last example. That's the Visa plus the MasterCard, the 4,000 plus the 6,000 in credit limit. But the credit balance has changed a little bit. Now we have 2,000 in credit balance still on the Visa, but on the MasterCard we have 0 credit balance. So now when we add it together, we only have $2,000 in credit balance. Take the $2,000 in credit balance divided by the 10,000 in credit limit, multiply it by 100 to get a percentage, and we've now reduced our percentage credit utilization to 20%. And like I said before, moving from 25 to 20% is going to have a positive effect. Now, the really important thing in this example is you can start to see how very important it is to not close those old or unused credit card accounts. So let's say we had this very same scenario, and instead of just leaving that MasterCard open so that we can consider that 6,000 into our total credit limit, we'd actually closed it. Now all we would have for our aggregate credit utilization profile would be the Visa, which would be 4,000 in credit limit, 2,000 in credit balance, and you can just sort of eyeball that and find out that now, instead of having a 20% credit utilization, which was an improvement over our 25%, what we would actually have if we had closed that account is our credit utilization would have spiked to 50%, which is certainly not a good credit utilization if you don't have to. So all you needed to do and all you should do is just simply leave that credit account open so that you can take advantage of that extra credit limit in this calculation. So I've mentioned a couple times making sure that you're taking a look at that credit report. Certainly as Quizzle, we recommend that you get our free credit report and score every 6 months, which you can get from Quizzle.com. And in addition to credit utilization, it's really important to use that credit report for 3 very significant factors for your credit health. 1, credit bureaus do make mistakes, and creditors actually report inaccurately from time to time. So you want to look for those on a regular basis. You certainly want to protect yourself from identity fraud, which is on the rise. A lot of trends are showing the opening of new accounts is kind of the flavor of identity fraud of recent, which means they're targeting very good credit scores, and they're opening new accounts in your names. And really the only way you're going to know about that is if you're taking a look at your credit report on a regular basis and making sure that all the accounts that are listed on there are accounts that you have opened. And then certainly, just like this video on credit utilization, you want to take a look at that report for opportunities to improve individual items and factors on your credit report.